Hey, good morning, 7th grade. This is April the 6th, Monday, April the 6th. This will be your language lesson. Just one reminder, you have a reading test today, sometime today. Take your reading test for book 704. That is open book, whatever you need. Take your reading test for book 704, and then you'll be starting on the next book, 705. First lesson is due on Wednesday, so please keep up with reading. That test will be handed in then at the end of this week. Lesson 12 was due today. We want to go over a few things, especially some of you had questions on especially the compound complex sentences and diagrams, so we want to do a couple of those on the board. And then go over some of your direct object and indirect object review from Lesson 12. Lesson 13 is due for tomorrow. Lesson 13 is verb review, so I'm not even going to go over that. You go over the directions, you follow directions, read over the helping verbs, the being verbs, linking verbs, everything that has to do with verbs. You see what you can do for that assignment tomorrow. So even if you didn't get these diagrams done, if you have no idea how to do these diagrams, okay, turn to Lesson 12, page 45. Lesson 12, page 45. And let's go over these compound complex sentence diagrams. And they are a little complex, but you do know how, you've learned how to diagram compound sentences. Okay, a compound sentence is when you have two independent clauses connected by a comma and a conjunction or a semicolon. Okay, two independent clauses, two complete thoughts connected to each other, subjects, verbs in each. For example, look at number 18. Please look at number 18. The sentence is, Mongolia is one of the oldest countries, semicolon, okay? So that's the first part of a compound sentence. Mongolia is one of the oldest countries. Mongolia would be your subject. Is the verb. If you go through and do this in all of these sentences, it will benefit you. Underline Mongolia once as the subject, is twice as the verb, and label one. What is one? Mongolia is one. One is renaming Mongolia, so that's a PN. Put parentheses around prepositional phrases. Of the oldest countries in preposition. All right, if you want to, you could circle the semicolon, because that semicolon will be on your diagram. Second part of the compound sentence. It reached the zenith of its power in the 13th century. Stop there, because what do you see next? Next, you see the subordinating conjunction, when. So if you want to circle that conjunction, when, and we'll figure out where that goes. But the second main idea of the sentence is, it reached the zenith of its power in the 13th century. All right, again, subject and verb. It, underline once as the subject. Reached, underline twice. And what is zenith? It reached. Reached is an action verb. The zenith was reached. Zenith is a DO, direct object. And then you have of its power and in the 13th century as prepositional phrases. Don't forget about the little words a, and the adjectives that are in there, okay? This doesn't quite include all the words there with what we've underlined and put in parentheses, but almost. But don't forget about those small words, all right? And then you have when, subordinating conjunction, that's introducing a dependent clause, an idea that doesn't stand alone, but it has a subject and a verb. It's just adding details to one of the main ideas. When Genghis Khan conquered China. Okay, that's an adverb adverb clause talking about it when it reached. Okay, Genghis Khan, when Genghis Khan conquered China. So that's put that in brackets. The dependent clause in brackets. Genghis Khan is the subject, conquered is the verb, and China is a direct object. All right, now you can fill that diagram in. Number 18, fill it in so that you see what's going on. The top line is the first main idea of the sentence. So on the top line, you will be putting Mongolia is one of the oldest countries. So put all of that in the right place. Think about it. All right, if you want to pause the video here and see if you can fill it in, that wouldn't be a bad idea. The subject on the top line, this diagram is given for you. So on the top line, you have Mongolia is the verb, one is the predicate nominative. Under one is the prepositional phrases. Of countries, and then the adjectives under countries, the oldest. All right, you notice the dotted line, the straight line, the dotted line underneath the verb is. That's where your semicolon goes. If you had a coordinating conjunction, that would be where your conjunction goes. This is connecting the two main thoughts of a compound sentence. So you have the semicolon from is on the line, short line straight across between the two dotted lines. Now you have the second main part of this sentence, and that is, it reached the zenith of its power in the 13th century. And so you put the subject, verb, and we have a direct object here. It, subject, reached, verb, zenith, direct object. And then the two prepositional phrases. Under reached, when it reached, is in the 13th century. So in century, the 13th, under reached. Under zenith, you would have the adjective the, and then the prepositional phrase of power its. Okay, now you have the two main ideas of a compound sentence given there. And then you have the dependent clause, when Genghis Khan conquered China. The subordinating conjunction goes on the dotted line, under reached. So the dotted line under reached gets when, the subject, Genghis Khan, verb, conquered, China. All right? So if you didn't catch all that, go back and listen to it again. That's the benefit of videos. You can just go back and say it again. I don't have to say it a couple times to make sure you got it, right? All right, look at number 19. Number 19 is also a compound complex sentence. All right? Compound sentence in that it has two main ideas connected, in this case, by a comma and a conjunction. But don't get confused about what the two main ideas are. So the first main idea in number 19 is Mark felt a tug on his line. All right? And then you have the comma and the conjunction. So stop right there. And underline the subject once, the verb twice, and label any complements. Direct objects, predicate nominatives, predicate adjectives. What do we have? Mark felt a tug on his line. Subject is Mark. Underline that. Either label it S or underline it once. Felt is the verb twice. Now felt is one of those that can be either an action verb or a linking verb. In this case, what is it? Mark felt, so he's fishing and he feels a tug, right? There's a tug, he actually feels it, so that is action. So he felt a tug, tug would be a direct object. On his line, prepositional phrase in parentheses. All right, if you want to circle the but, the conjunction, you can do that. Now, what is the main idea of the next? What's the independent clause of the next part? Well, we have the word when, which is a what. Don't get confused here. When is a subordinating conjunction. So that's the dependent clause. That's going to get diagrammed last at the bottom of all this. So the next main idea is Mark felt a tug on his line, but nothing was on the hook. Okay? That dependent clause comes first, but it will be diagrammed last. So the next line, so you put a, well, let's just fill this in on the sentence first, and then we'll look at the diagram. Nothing was on the hook. Underline nothing once. Was twice. Was is a verb, a being verb. And on the hook, prepositional phrase. Right? Then you have the dependent clause. He reeled it in. He is the subject. Reeled is the verb. What got reeled? Direct object. It is a direct object. In, when in is by itself, it is an adverb. Where he reeled it. He reeled it in. There's no object of the preposition. It's an adverb. All right? Take a second to do that in that sentence, and then, if you want to, you can try the diagram. Okay? It will be a similar diagram to number 18. So if you want to pause the video again here before you see the diagram and see if you can do it, and then check it, that would not be a bad idea. Okay? It looks a whole lot like the one up top. It's a compound sentence. It will have the two levels, two independent clauses like 18, and then a dependent clause starting with the when. All right, here's the diagram. All right, we said Mark is the subject, felt, tug. Make sure you put the prepositional phrase in the right place. This is an adjective phrase talking about the tug. Which tug? The one on his line. On line his. Don't forget about the little adjectives. A tug. All right? Mark felt a tug on his line. Coordinating conjunction between the two parts of a compound sentence. But, connect that to the verb, was. Nothing was, prepositional phrase, on the hook. All right? Subordinating conjunction, when. Subordinating conjunctions always go from verb to verb. Okay? Verb to verb. Start doing that. Some of you had questions, and I don't always count it wrong, but start doing that. These are adverb clauses, so they're going from verb to verb. When, he, reeled, it, direct object, in, adverb. Okay? Mark felt a tug on his line, but you have the when he reeled it in, but that's last. That gets diagrammed last. When he reeled it in, again, subordinating conjunction, introducing the dependent clause. When he reeled it in, and then the second main part of your compound sentence, nothing was on the hook. So you have a compound sentence. Mark felt a tug on his line, but nothing was on the hook. And then the subordinating conjunction makes it compound complex. When he reeled it in. So check that out. Hopefully that helps you out with these diagrams. Some of you had questions. All right, let's just check out. I'm going to erase one of these diagrams so we can put one of your diagrams from today's lesson, another one of the diagrams from today's lessons up there. But let's look at number 12, lesson 12, page 43, looking at direct objects and indirect objects, all right? So the first part of lesson 12, we'll do a couple of these just so that you have a feel for it, okay? Direct object. What is a direct object? What is an indirect object? A direct object comes after an action verb. It receives the action. Okay, the action is going to that word. And an indirect object comes between an action verb and a direct object, and it receives the direct object. The direct object is going to the indirect object. Okay, don't get confused by those. So number 3, please hand Christopher the salt and pepper. You're supposed to underline the verbs twice, subjects once, Circle direct objects, put parentheses around indirect objects. What's the subject of number 3? The subject of number 3 and 5, by the way, was you understood. You should have you in parentheses there in front of number 3 or somewhere there. You, hand is the verb. Okay, then ask the question. You have an action verb, handing something. What is getting handed? Okay, what is getting handed? The salt and the pepper. Christopher is not getting handed. I'm not handing Christopher to anybody. Too hard work. Okay? The salt and pepper should be circled. They're the ones that are getting handed. Who is getting the salt? Who or what is getting the salt and pepper? Christopher. Okay, so you have Christopher in parentheses. You is the subject. Hand is the verb. Salt and pepper circled. And Christopher in parentheses. Number 7. Annette picked some lilacs, put the flowers in the water, and set them on the table. All right? Make sure you read the entire sentence so that if there's any compound, anything, all right? What is happening in number 7? Subject, verb. Make sure I got it right. Yes. Subject is Annette. What did Annette do? Annette picked. Picked is a verb. What did she pick? Lilacs should be circled. What else did Annette do? She put. What did she put? She put flowers. Flowers circled in the water. And what else did she do? Set them circled. Set is a verb and them is circled. So that's direct objects and indirect objects. Let's slap the diagram for number 9 on the board yet. Look at the diagram for number 9. Make sure you have everything that you're supposed to have there. What is the subject? What is the verb? And I'm guessing that because we're talking about direct objects and indirect objects, it is very likely that one or the other or both will be on there. You cannot have an indirect object without a direct object. The indirect object always comes between the direct object and the action verb. Peter rebuked Ananias and Sapphira for lying. Again, figure out subject and verb. Peter rebuked. All right. Who or what was rebuked? Ananias and Sapphira. Remember how to diagram direct objects. Straight line down to the line. Here in this case you have a compound one. Ananias make sure I know how to spell this. Sapphira. And don't forget your conjunction. Okay, direct object. Then you have a prepositional phrase, for line, and did you catch the fact that on this prepositional phrase, the object of the preposition is one of these doohinkies. A gerund. All right, that is number 9 on lesson 12. Number 11 had a compound indirect object. Dad and Mom brought Krista and me souvenirs. Souvenirs would be the direct object. Krista and me would be a compound indirect object. So you would have this line, and then Krista and me down here is the indirect object. That's number 11. All right, 7th grade, have a good day. Make sure lesson 13 is finished for tomorrow.